Let's take a look at Week 7 sleepers and two-star pitchers up next on Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Welcome into FBT Express on Friday, May 2nd. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White, and let's get into our Week 7 preview, starting with the schedule. 24 teams with 6 games next week. 6 teams with 7 games, including the D-backs, Braves, White Sox, Reds, Royals, and Dodgers. Starters sit these two-star pitchers, and there is a ton to ask you about.
Yeah.
Cole Reagan's up first here. Not entirely sure if he's going to start, but if he does, it looks like he lines up for the White Sox and Red Sox.
Yeah, so he's supposed to throw a bullpen session Friday. If it checks out, he'll start Monday. And you'll want to start him, obviously, in that scenario.
What about Bryce Miller, who's coming off a back injury? He struggled with walks this season. He is at the Athletics and home against the Blue Jays.
Yeah, so he's also said he's had some arm soreness he's been dealing with this year. So
yeah,
it's a little worrisome, but I think the matchups are fine. And we haven't heard any talk about him being skipped or anything. So I still have Bryce Miller as a must-start two-star pitcher.
What about Corbin Burnes, who has not looked right this season? He gets the Mets for a second start in a row and the Dodgers. Let's just lump him in with Zach Gallen because they have the same matchups. What do you think?
They do have the same matchups. Burnes is going first, so he's more likely to actually make 2 starts. And I don't have either as a must start for this week because there's just been too much inconsistency. Those matchups are really tough. I wouldn't even say inconsistency in Burnes' case. He's just been underwhelming, right? But I do have them in the second highest tier, 4 total tiers for my 2-star pitcher rankings. They're in the advisable in most cases category.
What about Ronel Blanco, who is at the Brewers and home against the Reds?
Yeah, I mean, he's lower than the 2 Diamondbacks pitchers, but he's in that same category, advisable in most cases.
What about Brady Singer at the Braves and at the Astros?
That I have as a points league only pick.
All right. What about Sandy Alcantara, who's home against the Dodgers at the White Sox?
You know, so there's one horrible matchup there and one great matchup. But even without that, like even if it was 2 pretty good matchups, I just don't think I could do it with Alcantara right now. It seems like way more downside than is worth pursuing the upside for. Yeah, it's a no for me.
And Jackson Jobe, who is at the Rockies and home against the Rangers.
Also a no. He really hasn't shown us much of anything this year. And maybe it'll change. I'm hopeful given how big of a prospect he was, but got to see some signs of it, Jackson Jobe.
Which 2-star pitchers are you looking to add and stream for next week?
Top of the list is Tony Gonsolin, who looked great in his first start in a couple years, coming back from Tommy John surgery. And then also, I think it was a hamstring injury, sidelined him for the start of this year. Tons of whiffs, tons of strikeouts. And the first of his 2 starts is against that same Marlins lineup. So Gonsolin seems like a must add and must start too with the 2 starts. Shane Smith, ERA about 2.20 on the year, still only 38% rostered in fantasy, even with the RP eligibility. Of course, there's a lot of head-to-head points leagues on the CBS platform. I don't think he's that good. I think there's some regression coming for Shane Smith, but not against the Royals and Marlins. I think he's a fine choice with those matchups. Lucas Giolito returned from a lengthy absence, Tommy John surgery, the same day as Tony Gonsolin, actually, and also got good results. The underlying stuff wasn't as impressive. Gave up a couple home runs, did not miss bats at a high rate at all. But I think we give him the benefit of the doubt. I think we see the glass half full, given that his 2 matchups this week, Rangers and Royals, 2 offenses that have been in the bottom 5 so far this year. Luis Ortiz, swinging strike rate way up. His first year with the Guardians, has multiple starts with 8 strikeouts or more. I think for the strikeout upside, might be worth a roll of the dice against the Nationals and Phillies. Also relief pitcher eligibility there for Luis Ortiz. Luis Severino, nobody's idea of a bat misser anymore, but he's been an efficient pitcher, working deep into games consistently. He's kept the ERA and WHIP respectable. And the kind of volume he's going to give you in a 2-start week, I think makes it worth it, at least in head-to-head points leagues. Tyler Anderson, dangerous pitcher, high walk rate, higher fly ball rate. But so far, those fly balls have, he's given up some home runs, but he's given up very few hits otherwise. So the numbers actually look good for Anderson. Toronto, Baltimore's 2 matchups. They've both struggled, underachieved, I would say, offensively, and maybe it could continue. Dangerous, Tyler Anderson. But if you like to live dangerously, it might work. Jake Irvin, quality start machine. His last start wasn't very good. When it goes bad, it tends to go really bad, but he's decent and works deep into games. 2 starts, Cleveland and St. Louis. And finally, David Peterson, ground ball pitcher, outlier for ground balls on a good offense. And 2 starts coming up this week. The matchups aren't great, but I think in points leagues, there's a decent chance he gives you 2 wins. And you'll take 2 bites at the apple from him.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this.
Get ready for a Sunday showdown on CBS and streaming live on Paramount+.
Welcome back in FBT Express, continuing on with our Week 7 preview. Scott, 1-start streamers, you've only got 2 names for next week.
Yep, only 2 names, and those names are Michael Wacha against the White Sox, who has a stable track record. Hasn't been great so far this year, but I think we all trust him to come around, and he gets the White Sox this upcoming week. Matthew Liberatore's latest start was shortened by rain, but had 3 straight quality starts before then. Missing bats at a nice rate this year. Elite control. Don't entirely trust it for Liberatore, but he's got the Pirates. I will note, I should also point this out for Tony Gonsolin, who is my favorite 2-start sleeper. He might just be a 1-start guy because it's a 7-game week starting on Tuesday. Things happen, especially with the way the Dodgers like to add extra pitchers in there. But if it is 1-start, it's the Marlins. And I think he'd still be at the top of this list as a 1-start pitcher against the Marlins.
All right, what about hitters for next week? The best matchups: Royals, Padres, Astros, Mariners, and Nationals. The worst hitter matchups: Rays, Phillies, Brewers, Red Sox, and Rockies. Your sleeper hitters for Week 7, Scott, are whom?
So there are a lot more teams with good hitter matchups than bad hitter matchups. You listed the Rockies as having the 5th worst matchups. That's with a full week of home games. I'm not sure I've ever done that before for the Rockies, because Coors Field being the environment that it is, but it goes to show you there just weren't a lot of choices for bad hitter matchups this week. So a lot of these hitters are just players that I think are deserve to be rostered more than they are, beginning with Andy Pages, who's raised his batting average about 100 points and his OPS about 300 points over the last week. And it's hard to look past that on the waiver wire as long as the matchups are decent, which they are. He's one of the 4 teams playing 7 games, 3 against the Marlins. Agustin Ramirez, just way too talented to still qualify for this list. The matchups are okay. 3 games against the White Sox especially makes it okay. But really, I just think Agustin Ramirez needs to be picked up everywhere, started everywhere from now, maybe till the end of time. Nate Lowe, Nathaniel, as he's known in some places. 5th best hitter matches for the Nationals, only 1 lefty on the schedule. He's been fine regardless, but especially against righties this year. Kyle Stowers for the Marlins. Again, their matchups are okay, mostly because of that White Sox series. But what I like for him especially is nothing but righties on the schedule. He's a left-handed hitter. He's actually done great against lefties this year, but the sample is so small. I think we're going to, for now at least, trust him more against righties. And, just had a big game Wednesday, and his numbers look great so far. I'm not saying he's going to be that good forever, but I'd ride the hot hand. If I'm looking for an outfielder, Kyle Stowers. Mason Wynn also picking things up at the plate. TJ Friedel, the Reds leadoff hitter. They're one of those teams playing 7 games. I think he's undervalued in general. Jonathan India, if you want to take advantage of the team with the best hitter matchups, which is the Royals, he's their leadoff hitter. He's due to come around, especially with those good matchups. 3 interesting names here at the end. Max Muncy, who's only available as widely as he is because he's been horrible to begin the year. But he's showing signs of life. We'll monitor it over the weekend before I update Sunday to see if he still belongs on this list. But obviously a great track record. Nothing but righties on the schedule for the Dodgers, and he's become one of those left-handed hitters who hits righties much better than lefties. I'm sorry, 6 righties on the schedule for the Dodgers. There is 1 lefty in a 7-game week. And then finally, really deep options here. Trevor Larnach, only 28% rostered. He's been starting a lot more for the Twins and hitting well. He's always had good underlying data, and the matchups favor him. And then finally, Eli White, only 4% rostered. He's taken over in right field for the Braves. He's hitting the ball much harder in years past. He's using a torpedo bat. He's got 99th percentile sprint speed and is making use of that too. He emerged as a lefty masher last year. 4 lefties on the schedule in the Braves 7 games. He might just start all 7 games, but I think the 4 lefties helps Eli White's cause.
All right, for more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and we will be back again next week. Bye-bye.